Hey guys, welcome back into another episode of the Sports Authority Gurus podcast. I'm your host, Keegan Russell. In today's episode, I'm joined by my co-host Tyler Chrisman once again to talk some more KU football. We take a look back at the OU game from over the weekend, discuss the impact all those injuries are having on the team, and then look forward to the Baylor game this upcoming weekend and the likelihood KU gets that much coveted 6th win to become bowl eligible. Well, Tyler, the Hawks dropped to the Sooners over the weekend 52-42 in what was an offensive shootout from the get-go. This game was tied early on in the first half, and then OU jumped out to a bigger lead between that second and third quarter. And despite KU's attempts late in that game to come back, they do fall just short. But like I said, this was an offensive shootout. Oklahoma had over 100 plays offensively, and once you add that with KU's, we're looking at about 150 plays offensively, which is just unheard of. But again, the Hawks fall short. So give me your quick thoughts on how that game went down, and that does leave us at 5-2 now, which of course KU dropped out of the standings, understandably. But how are you feeling coming off of that loss? Give me your take on how that game went and what this means for us moving forward.
It was a little tough. Anytime you give up 700 yards of offense on defense, you're not going to win the game. We hung around, but I think a combination of Oklahoma being mad with the way their season had been going and them getting Dylan Gabriel back was a big reason why, we saw them play well. And then, like you touched on, some of the injuries we've had on defense and even during the game with Kobe Bryant and Lonnie Phelps there, I think and even Taiwan Berryhill, it just kind of added up, and we couldn't stop anybody. And but we fought, and losing by 10 to an Oklahoma team, we would take that in years past. So I think we're still in a good position, and hopefully we can get some healthier guys and move on and get a couple wins.
Yeah, if this was preseason, I think KU fans would be stoked that we only lost by 10 and we were able to put up 42 points. This team last year, in normal KU football years, this would have been a 62-7 blowout or 45-10 blowout. So the fact that we hung 42 on them on the road was fantastic. We did talk about this last week. How would Oklahoma look coming off two embarrassing losses where they just got the crap beat out of them? And give OU credit. They came out with the game plan. They came out with aggressiveness. They had a lot to play for, and they proved to themselves that they're not done. This was quite an impressive offensive showcase from them. They did get Dylan Gabriel back, and he looked pretty good. And just from the get-go, they were firing on all cylinders. KU though, this is week 2 with Jason Bean under center for the injured Jalen Daniels, and he still looked pretty solid. Stat-wise, he went 16 of 27 for 265 yards, had 4 huge touchdowns, but he did have 2 costly picks, and maybe looking back now, those 2 picks would be 2 possessions that lead to points, and maybe this is a different game. But offense still looked pretty solid. They still had a big day, but defensively, man, this was one of KU's worst defensive showings for the year so far and of the Leipold era. And kind of like you touched on, though, a lot of that probably has to do with some of the injuries. So let's focus in on that for a second. KU coming into the game already had a somewhat banged up Kenny Logan. He was wearing an elbow brace. Lonnie Phelps tweaked something throughout the week, and he was only able to get in for about 15 plays. Other injuries, we saw Kobe Bryant go down with the high ankle sprain. At the time, it did not look very pretty. Since then, he's doing okay. Leipold hasn't said when he'll be back. He just said it's kind of day to day right now, but he hasn't practiced. And of course, Tywin Berry, like you mentioned, he kind of got banged up. So the defense took a big hit injury wise. I think that's kind of what led to some of the struggle. But again, Oklahoma came out with an intense game plan, and they were not going to get embarrassed for the third week in a row. But looking back at that game offensively, how did you feel Jason Bean and that offense fared against this Oklahoma defense?
I think for the most part, Bean played well. Like you said, he had those 2 turnovers, and I think that's maybe what gave Daniels the nod as the starter to begin the season is kind of Bean's decision making. You can see he has all the athletic tools in the world, and he'll make some great, NFL level throws. But then you'll see where he throws one high over the middle, and it's right to the other team, and you're kind of wondering what his um, thought process was on that, and it's just like he hasn't really put it together completely on the mental side. So I think the more reps he gets, he'll do better. But I mean, he threw for what, 4 touchdowns, kept us within 10. So I mean, a lot of backups for other schools. I mean, you'd be happy with that almost anywhere, I would think.
Yeah, 8 touchdowns in 2 weeks for him, four in back-to-back weeks has been pretty good there. Looks like he's found some great connections down the field with Lawrence Arnold and Mason Fairchild, who both scored twice that game, and one of them, Fairchild, was just completely wide open. Defense completely forgot about him. He's a big target in the red zone, but Lawrence Arnold had another huge game offensively. I think being kind of like you said, he's been relatively inconsistent. And again, he hasn't had much reps this year, not a lot of time, but you can kind of see play styles similar to Jalen Daniels, the play calling similar. But Jalen, as we've discussed before, just seems to make the right decisions more often. And Bean just kind of gets caught up in some of those moments. Honestly, one of those interceptions he threw was a tip pass that the defensive back went way up for, tipped it up to himself, fell down and caught it. So maybe that one doesn't get picked off, but some of that decision making, has led to a couple of those mistakes. But overall, offense looks solid. Still put up big numbers, but again, that defense is really what hurt, and again, a lot of those injuries. So as we kind of transition to the middle of this week, let's talk about those injuries. And let's start first with today. It was announced that Jalen Daniels did return to practice at a limited capacity. He's still not on pace to play this weekend. Still doubtful for this weekend. And with next week being the bye week, we probably won't see him back till the November 5th home game against Oklahoma State. So it's probably being again under center, but he gets another full week of practice to get lined up with the offense and fire on all cylinders. But all those injuries are piling up now. You're already down Highshaw, you're down Daniels, your defense is super banged up. How do you think these injuries are going to impact not just this weekend? Can we get by this weekend and go into a bye week and recover, or is this another week where defensively we're going to see a big struggle just because these guys are so banged up?
I think as long as we get a somewhat healthy Lonnie Phelps, that'll help a lot because during the Oklahoma game, we didn't hardly get any pressure at all. So if his injury isn't too bad, then I think the defense will be better because anytime you can get pressure on the quarterback, that lets your secondary not have to cover as long, and your linebackers can make tackles. But I think the bye week, like you said, it's coming at a pretty good time. The injuries are stacking up. We've got one more game, and then you can kind of reset. And I saw where Leipold even kind of talked about it, where he was glad that the bye week wasn't in like week 2, where it was for a lot of teams. Coming at when it is the week after this next game, I think that's a big plus for KU, and we can kind of build off that, let everybody reset, and kind of go from there.
Thankfully, the Hawks do have a decent amount of depth on defense, but it was clearly still a struggle to not have all those guys in. So this week, assuming Kobe Bryant is out for the weekend, we'll see Kalon Gervin sliding over from his nickel corner spot to that outside corner across from Dotson. Berryhill looks like he'll be fine this weekend. Not really sure what's going on with Phelps. Haven't seen too much conversation there, but it sounds like he'll probably be playing maybe on a somewhat limited capacity. But yeah, this is another big weekend ahead, and if we can get through this weekend, you've got a long bye week to kind of rest and relax and recover and get through some of those injuries. So let's turn our attention now to this weekend. KU is again on the road down at Baylor, and Baylor is coming off of an overtime loss to West Virginia this last week. Baylor's sitting at 3-3 right now currently. They are 1-2 in the conference. I'm sorry, I said that was an overtime loss. It was not an overtime loss. They just lost late at the end of the game. But offensively and defensively, again, this is another team that statistically lines up fairly similar to KU. KU's still averaging about 40 points a game. Baylor's averaging about 38. KU's given up 30 points a game. Baylor's got the edge here where they're only giving up 24. However, in conference play, they're giving up a little bit more. They've had some the last 3 games they've allowed their opponents to score at least 24 in conference play, and of course, let Oklahoma State put a 36 on them a couple weeks ago, and then West Virginia scored 43 this last weekend. But as you look through the rest of it, offensively, they both average north of 400 yards. Baylor's got a slight edge there, although their offense has been really inconsistent. KU still has the edge rushing wise, over 200 yards versus Baylor's 185. But the big difference here is KU's given up a lot more yards defensively than Baylor is. So Baylor definitely has the edge on defense. This is going to be one of those where can KU put up enough points against that defense to stay ahead and trust that our own defense can kind of slow down Baylor. Baylor's not a super impressive offense, but they're by no means a bad offense. They've just had inconsistent play at quarterback. They've had some injuries throughout the season at quarterback too. But KU comes into the weekend as an 8-point underdog, even though they are the better record still. 8-point underdog. They've got the over-under set at 58, so they still think this will be around that 30 points there. So they do think both defenses kind of pull that game back. So just give me your outlook on this Baylor Bears team. This isn't your typical Baylor team we've had the last couple of years where they've been sitting undefeated at this point in the year. But what is your first glance at this Baylor team, and how do you think this game's going to shake out?
I think it's going to be another shootout. Like you said, their offense, it can be good at times. They haven't been real consistent. And then, their defense hasn't really held up to in conference to be able to stop a whole lot of people. So it sounds an awful lot like KU. I think KU might have a little bit more of a high-powered offense than Baylor does. But I think it's really the game will probably come down to turnovers and who can create those extra possessions to kind of swing the momentum. And I actually think it's going to be a pretty high-scoring game because I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of defense involved.
I agree with you there. Neither defense. I mean, like I said, Baylor's defense is better, but I think KU's offense is still dynamic enough. And with Bean having another full week of practice to get connected with this offense, I agree with you. It's going to be a big shootout. For me, this game, and I think we mentioned this with the OU game last week, I go back to it's a battle of the trenches. Can our offensive line hold up long enough to get the run game going? Can we have enough diversity in that run game and mix it up between Neal and Morrison and Kai Thomas so that it keeps those passing lanes open? And then flip side, Baylor has a very spread out, balanced running game as well. So can our defensive line keep enough pressure on their O line to, get tackles for loss and kind of slow that run game down to 2, maybe 3 yards of carry? That's kind of where I focus in again on this game, just like last week. Offensively, I'm not too worried about KU going into this matchup. They've looked pretty solid still, even without Daniels, and Bean's getting more comfortable back there for sure. But how can you limit the bleeding on defense? Can the defense do enough? Can they mix it up enough to slow down Baylor? That's kind of where I think this game is gonna go. How do those defenses look against each other? And can one of them create turnovers, like you said? If this is gonna be a high scoring shootout game, someone's got to make a mistake to create extra possessions for the other team, and that may ultimately what breaks down who wins this game. I think another area that I'm curious to see how it goes is the special teams unit. Um, I think KU's been decent at times, special teams. They've also struggled at times. But if this is a game where the defenses are picking up the pace and slowing the other offenses down, how can our special teams flip the field? You know, we can't miss any field goals. We've been a little bit sloppy there. We got to have the right play calling. We got to limit the big kickoffs, not kicking it out of bounds, not giving up big plays there. But special teams is the other area I'm going to be looking at this weekend just to see how they do. So Tyler, give me as we look at this game and we're breaking it down. You said it's going to be a high scoring shootout. Do you have any prediction there on how this game ends up?
I'll give you one. I'm going to go 42-41. KU squeaks it out in a high scoring game.
Okay, that's way over the over. Which again last week both teams hit well over their over as well there. But yeah, as I'm trying to look through these stats to see if there's anything to give you some insight. I do agree with you. This is going to be high scoring. I was listening to another podcast about the football team, and they're saying same thing. If KU gets to 40, that's got to be the game plan. Got to score 40 to stay ahead and keep up because this defense is gonna give up a lot. So I'm interested to see how this defense looks. Can they get guys healthy enough? Get Lonnie Phelps healthy again because he's been a beast on the line and putting pressure. But I think I still have KU winning this game too. I'm gonna go. You know what? Let's go bigger. Let's go 45-38. KU wins by a touchdown. covers the spread of at least 8, but ends up winning by 7 and gets that 6th win. That's kind of where I feel this game going. I'm not that confident in Baylor's offense. I do think that defense is going to be a struggle, but the way KU's played offensively, they're still an explosive unit and can put up points in a quick pace. Um, but yeah, that's where I stand with this game. Now, just to play the negative side for a moment, let's say KU does drop this game. They go to 5-3, 2-3 in the conference. They're still one win away from being bowl eligible. As we look at the rest of the schedule here, after the Baylor game, they have that much needed bye week. And then they host a top 25 Oklahoma State team who is playing very well. Just came off of a loss to TCU, which was a fun game to watch. If you guys got a chance to check that one out, two of the best teams in the Big 12, two of the best offenses in the Big 12. But Oklahoma State did drop that. So you have them after the bye week. That's going to be another tough matchup. Then you have probably your next most winnable game on the schedule, hosting Texas Tech at home. Tech has not had a good year. They've had a lot of injuries and they've played, I think, 4 different quarterbacks. That's a game that you should be able to be a heavy favorite in and win. And then you go back on, or actually, you have one more home game after that, senior night, hosting Texas. Texas currently is ranked. They've been kind of on the up and up this year. And then you end the season at K State. So as we look at that schedule, if KU were to drop this week to Baylor, do you think they can still get that 6th win, um, or even 7 or 8 wins? How do you feel the rest of the season will shake out if we drop this weekend?
Um, it's there's no easy games the rest of the way. I would, like you said, I would say probably the most winnable one on paper would be Texas Tech, but then again, you never know. Just like us beating Texas last year, you never know when a team that's had a rough year is going to have a game where it all comes together and they pull off an upset. So I don't think that there's definitely a chance for us to get to that 6 win mark, but I don't think it's going to be easy, and I don't think we'll get much past the 6 win mark because I think Texas, they'll be motivated, especially after losing to us last year. And then K State in Manhattan, they've looked good all season despite just the Tulane game, but they've looked really good as of late. Martinez both throwing and running the ball. So I think, like you said, the best chance is Texas Tech, but you never know. KU's been in most games, every game this season, so we could come down to the wire and surprise some people. I think we just need to get healthy and see what happens.
Like you said, it is a very tough schedule the rest of the way. Anytime you're in conference play, doesn't matter how good or bad you are, conference games just are much bigger and they always seem to be a little tighter. But KU's got 3 of their next 5 opponents are top 25 teams, so you're playing the best of the best in the Big 12 down the way. You got TCU out of the way already, but you still have the big dogs ahead of you. Um, so they have a lot of pressure, and I'm still confident we get to 6. I think a couple weeks ago when we were talking, I put their ceiling. I think this was after they started 3-0 or 4-0, maybe. I had their ceiling at 8 wins. I still think that is a possibility. I'm not feeling too great about that now. I could easily see them finish 6-6 or 7-5. I still have that K State game circled at the end of the year as a big prove it game for our program. Can we keep up with K State, who's been dominant over us the last 10 years? So I still have that game circled as a potential. Then, of course, like you said, you never know how that Texas game's going to go. Obviously, Texas fans are very upset with that loss last year, and they've had an up and down season, but they're on the up right now. Maybe KU can be that team that helps them stumble again this year and squeaks out another victory at home. But I still feel pretty good about this team getting at least one more win. Hopefully, they just go ahead and knock it out this weekend and put all the worry aside and get that bowl eligibility for the first time in 13 years. But KU fans, let us know what you're thinking too. This team is sitting 5-2 nationally. I think the perspective has changed on KU being the darling of NCAA football this year to kind of, oh, maybe they're really not as good as we thought. You hope some of that is really just because Jalen Daniels is out and, they're just thinking this team's better with Daniels. But KU has struggled the last 2 weeks and they are on the somewhat downhill. So KU fans, let us know what you think. You can find us on Twitter at the Sports A Gurus. You can hit us up on Facebook at the Sports Authority Gurus. leave comments here in the videos. But I'd love to know, Tyler would love to know how you guys are feeling as fans. Are you worried? Are you excited? You still feeling optimistic? Are you feeling like this is just the KU of old and they're going to go downhill? Please let us know what you're thinking. We'd love to get your thoughts as fans. We are fans ourselves, but we always want to know what the rest of the fan base is feeling and thinking. So as we head into this weekend, big matchup against Baylor. Get prepared for that. That is Saturday morning at 11 a.m. on ESPN2. Um, and just let's cheer them on. Like Tyler's saying, this is a team that's banged up right now, and they've got 4 quarters to get through before a much-needed bye week. So they're going to need some extra support this weekend from the fan base to cheer them on and push them through. And hopefully this time next week when we chat again, Tyler will be sitting at 6-2 and bowl eligible. But if not, we'll be brainstorming all the other ways they need to come up with another victory down the stretch. So Tyler, thanks again for joining me for this episode. Look forward to more of this season and hope that next time we talk some KU football, they are at that coveted 6 win. So the rest of you guys, thanks for joining us again tonight. This has been another episode of the Sports Authority Gurus podcast. If you haven't done so, please hit that subscribe button on YouTube or Spotify or iHeartRadio. Like we've mentioned before, still have some big things coming down the road. Don't want to share any of that news yet because it's still in the works, but if you haven't done so yet, please join the bandwagon now. You want to get on before everything gets going with KU basketball coming up. So with that, guys, thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to having you guys in the next episode. Rock Chalk.